So welcome everybody. I'm here to be joined by Chris Tamm. Really excited to jump into a conversation on automation, artificial intelligence, and how you can use this in your business, and in particular, how you can use this if you are in real estate. So Chris, why don't you give us an intro of who you are and what you're doing in 60 seconds or less, and we'll jump into some conversation.
Yeah, Mark, I appreciate you having me here. Less than 60 seconds. So I'm an entrepreneur by trade. I built and ran one of the larger top 20 real estate teams in the nation. Built one of the CRMs in the residential real estate space, FirePoint. I operationally run CEO of mortgage and an insurance company. I started to partner with real estate agents, and we do AI and automation conversions for other companies. So install these types of tools in a lot of different verticals.
Oh, wonderful. And so right now, AI is a super popular and sexy topic, and all business owners I know and entrepreneurs are looking into some of the basic stuff with ChatGPT and Jasper and all that stuff. And it's great for brainstorming and content writing. But what would you say? So I would say the masses are already picking up on using AI to maybe do some research and maybe write some paragraphs. And then some of the teenagers are probably using them to write their essays and their book. But I don't think academia will ever be the same again. So we have all of that going on. But what are some things that you think people don't realize is available for them in the world of AI?
Well, that's a great question. As far as what they don't realize is available, depending on the skill level and what they want to do, I think some pieces are what you can fairly easily connect to when it comes to like machine learning, teaching databases how to learn and answer things back. There's lots of tools that have rolled out in the last 6 months or so that make that a lot easier, depending if they don't want to go super technical. Even ways where you can kind of drag and drop tons of information, or point these chatbots at websites and have them learn all the content immediately, so you can just talk with it. So that's starting to solve some challenges around people digging for information and going through these massive PDFs or Word documents, kind of finding answers. Another one is, it's tricky to do, but it's available, which is extracting information from pictures and videos. And so like we talked about some of that, we can show some of that in a little bit. As far as pulling even like very specific details, quality of things, types of houses. I mean, if we talk about real estate specifically, even like what types of countertops or quality or lighting levels. Some other ones, video has lagged a little bit behind where we thought it would be by now. So like we don't see, unless it's super expensive, like the $250,000 a year contracts, we don't see real-time video entering yet. But processed video, where you can have a system create video from scratch, has never existed, is making really good strides, but it hasn't entered the mainstream yet. And then I think maybe another piece that a lot of people don't know about, but has been around for quite a while, is robotic process automation, which is computers using computers. And so letting a computer do the tasks that a person normally would, like navigating a computer, using Excel, using traditional programs. And that's making pretty fast strides also.
Interesting. Tell me about the robotic process automation. The last one that you just told me, what did you say it was called again?
Yeah, RPA. So robotic process automation.
Okay. So tell me about some real world applications of this that you're seeing.
Yeah, so some of them, I'm trying to see if I have a quick one that I could pull up for everybody here. But it's a couple different ways. It's basically it's a subset of AI. So it's one of the pieces under AI. It's computers that use other computers. And so there's some simple versions of this. Like there's one, let me see, what is it, Browse AI. I think Otter's another one, but these are like traditionally screen scraping tools. And so if you want to get a lot of information off the web, you can point these tools at something and say, hey, extract all this information from these pages, go to the next page, extract it all, throw in Excel for me, or throw it into a Google Sheet. And so you start having computers use computers, and then you can teach them to do things. Like you can teach them to use Excel or to use QuickBooks, like QuickBooks Desktop or other programs. And so they can actually start doing tasks for you. There's ways to, I think it probably goes a little too technical from an implementation standpoint, but there's ways to just type natural language into your computer. They call it, it's a program that was started called LangChain. It was an MIT program. But you can just type instructions to your computer, and your computer will then run your computer and go download programs and find the ways to accomplish that using AI. So it actually starts taking over your computer, navigating websites, opening Excel, and actually saving files and running your computer for you.
Hey, very cool. So now I'm thinking to myself, let's say I wanted to, so do you think I can teach my computer to go online and copy and paste all the articles related to a certain tax code? So I say, hey, go to the web, copy and paste, pull out, put this all into a Word doc, sort it by relevance, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so I don't, from right where it's usable today, it's getting better with training and with specifically implementing. You can get it to do that right off the web. If you were to download it right now and do that, it's not perfect yet. That's kind of where it's the bleeding edge, where it's getting better.
Mm-hmm.
But if you knew how to use some of the tools, like there's like Automate Anywhere, UiPath, there's some tools where you can do a little bit more integration or deeper programming with it. Yes, you could definitely get it to do that. Like part of what our team does when businesses hire us is we kind of fine tune and implement whatever specific tool they need to do that kind of in mass. It's not there yet to where anybody can just download it, type, and have it run everything, but it's getting close to that.
Interesting. So in the world of real estate investing and being a real estate agent, we'll talk about the tool you created a little bit, but what are some ways that folks that listen to our podcast and webinar series, what are some tasks that you think that they could probably automate if they have a deeper understanding of all the resources available for AI?
Yeah, as far as today, and that's been kind of like one of those really big questions is, outside of ChatGPT or outside of creating an image on Midjourney, where can you use this right now, like to save time? I think some of those, so manipulating Excel is one of the areas that a lot of people don't use ChatGPT for. But even manipulating Excel, so using Excel to do forecasts, to do analysis, or to do goal seeking. Some of those are as simple as like copy and paste Excel information directly into ChatGPT and ask it, hey, can you forecast this for me for the next 6 months? Or if my costs go up by 10%, my income goes down by 10%, and I lose a renter for a month, project this out for the next 2 years. And it'll do all of that almost instantly. You can also have it goal seek the other way. So here's all the information I have. What do I need to do? Give me 5 options of how to make $1 million with this in the next 18 months. And it'll give you all the variance analysis, give you all the options. So doing analysis, doing forecasting is one. Using it to,
Now,
go for it.
Can ChatGPT interface with Excel? So let's say we wanted to do some projections, but also create charts and stuff that would rely on using Excel to put together to use all the data and create visuals. Would ChatGPT be able to do that?
So in a sense, there is a way to do it. There's a couple programs that bring AI into Excel. There's some Excel plugins for it. I'm trying to think the easiest way to deal with it. One of them is going to be Microsoft. Microsoft is rolling out their Microsoft Copilot, which is going to be in all of their applications. And that's not fully live yet, but in the very near future, they're going to have AI integrated directly into the applications and potentially even cross application. So you can just have it do things directly. There are a couple plugins that connect ChatGPT to Excel, and then there are a couple that connect it directly to Google Sheets. So it can access those. I would say they're not 100% bulletproof right now. And another way to deal with it is, and this is a little bit of a roundabout, but I think it's an interesting one, is you can go into ChatGPT and tell it what you want to do with your data. So you can tell it about your data in Excel, like, hey, I've got a list of 10,000 prospects or 10,000 houses or properties I'm analyzing, or a property list or a tax list. And you can tell it what you want to do with that. Like, hey, customers in column 1, status is in column D, and I want you to sort all of them, remove anybody with something in column E, and then put them into a table and format them a certain way. If you tell it about your data, then ChatGPT can kick out the Visual Basic and tell you how to run that in Excel. And so it's one extra step, but it builds the code for you, and then it tells you how to run it, and that takes over your Excel and builds everything that you want it to.
Now, here's another thing I'm thinking about here, and we're going to probably do a separate meeting with all of our clients on this. And we get a ton of data to try and make sense of all the data coming through all of the systems that are interfacing with QuickBooks Online, and then non-financial data. And we have tons of short-term rental investors getting tons and tons of data from Airbnb, VRBO, and all sorts of third-party vendors. And if we could find a way to aggregate this data to capture different patterns, to assess profitability, and understand maybe some adjustments that would need to be made. I mean, there's just tons and tons and tons of data. And I imagine there's a way that we can leverage AI to make correlations between different items that seem unrelated, or they are related. Maybe we just can't make those connections yet. And so some of the things I think about for our clients are, what is the, what's the average length of stay, and how does that impact profitability and booking rate, vacancies rates, and how do the cleaning costs compare to the cleaning fees, based on different types of engagements, or all sorts of patterns and correlations we can connect that maybe we wouldn't be able to recognize with our naked eyes on this data.
Yeah, very much. One of the things that we see is it's getting cheaper, faster, easier to build, kind of what you said, the idea of like a data mesh or a data fabric. When a system can see all those different data points, it just looks at it as one piece of fabric. And then, yeah, you can either ask it to draw out inferences or correlations that it sees that you can kind of take a look at and see what they mean. And then there's also quite a few different like business information or BI tools that you can plug it into as well, whether it's something like off the shelf, like a Microsoft Power BI, which has an AI natural language. You can just ask it questions about the data and understands what's there. But also, like you said, like the benchmarking piece, like if you can upload a tremendous amount of data and then start having it come up with inferences and bring in new data and learn about it. Yeah, a lot of ways to use data that way.
And one of the challenges in trying to make sense of the data is just cleaning up the data and formatting the data, and finding formulas that will maybe remove the extra spaces and all the extra things. So instead of racking your brain on, oh, what kind of formula is going to do exactly this, this, and this, you can probably give it to AI and they'll run a couple hundred scenarios to eventually arrive at the perfect formula to give you the data in the way that you'd like to look at it as well.
Yeah, and that can be done even with some people just directly through ChatGPT. Like if you know what's wrong with your data, or you know what you need to get rid of it, there are ways to, even go into ChatGPT and say, hey, I've got an Excel file or a CSV file, and I need to get rid of all the commas and all the characters that are non-numbers in this column. And you just tell it what you want it to do. And then it can spit out the code that it'll just take care of and do all of that for you in Excel. Again, to your point, getting those ones that are integrated directly with Excel or directly with Google Sheets to where it can just do it for you directly there is easier. But there's ways to add one step and just do it through like ChatGPT right now.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed was Google has their new AI component coming in that's going to help you, respond to emails, and will likely will interface with Google Sheets. So that's another. I don't know exactly when it'll be available, or if it already is, or you can already test it out. But all this stuff is really close to being in our fingertips.
Yeah, and there's some other ones like I think it's personal.ai, where it'll build kind of an AI machine learning around you, to where you could plug that into your text message and your email and have it right now auto suggest what you should respond with. And you can kind of create different personalities. You can have a business personality or a personal one and actually upload different information to it.
So what I'm wondering now also is, when let's say you're trying to research some recent events, with ChatGPT, it's not up to date, because I think it's like it only has data as much as going back like 2 years ago, at least as of right now, right? So if you wanted to research the tax code, for all you know, the tax code may have changed, or any other current events that you're looking to gather information on. So if you're looking to ask a question and get a direct answer that sources other websites, I think you can now do it from Bing because Bing is tied directly to their search engine. But what are your thoughts if we want to get accurate, up to date? We want to get an answer that's drawing from current events and the most up to date collective wisdom of the internet.
That's a great question. And again, these are all, I would say, well-educated opinions from our entire network and what we do. A couple different answers to that. One, ChatGPT has the Bing search with Bing integration. They pulled that back over the last, I think, week or so, and we're waiting to see when it gets re-released. And so one way, once that's re-released, is to go into ChatGPT, select the GPT-4, and then select search with Bing, because then it uses the ChatGPT large language models and GPT process, but then it also uses Bing. So it's actually clicking on links and searching and going through and pulling information together along with ChatGPT to answer. So that will take, who knows when they re-release that piece. One other option is to go in and use specific plugins inside of ChatGPT. So depending on what you're looking for, like there's a plugin, what is this one? I've used it before, which is scrolling through this, like Scholar AI and Wolfram, where those plugins have live access to their programs in the internet. And so if you're looking for like scholarly articles or specific things, you can use the plugins in ChatGPT, and those plugins do have real-time knowledge. If not that, then I would recommend kind of what you said of using Google, using Bing, where they are using AI to pull in real information and to do some of the natural language pieces. And you can do a lot more on that now through Bing and Google than you could, I mean, obviously a year ago.
Wonderful. Very cool. So it looks like, we have like a personal assistant that can now give us references. And I remember interfacing with ChatGPT, and I'm like, can you tell us where we got this information? And they would just source me to links that were out of date. But now with the Bing chat, we can actually get source references for those items, which is pretty neat. And so we can do the research, we can pull data. Sometimes I think that, there are some manual tasks that is still going to be grunt work, or you still got to either do it yourself or hand it off. And before we talk about your tool, I'm wondering, for folks that are investing into real estate and doing this stuff, I mean, they can use some of the other things I'm thinking about here. Use AI to write the non-disclosure agreements, maybe help with reviewing contracts. I mean, I know OCRs has its limits. We'll talk about how AI can help you out with creating articles and evaluating photos. Writing a newsletter, seasonal newsletters and all that good stuff, doing reports on, perhaps you can also even use AI to do reports on the market condition and trends.
Yeah, and we've seen some people that, like, there are some open sources that will provide like basic market info. But there's ways through, and again, you can do it manually, but you can also connect some things through like a low code or a no code environment, like a Zapier.com, where you could take, like, when an email comes in or when something comes in to say a Google Sheet, or somebody inquires about something, you could automatically have that come in, pull that market info, and then you can drop market info, somebody's LinkedIn profile, information about what they said. And then you can have something like ChatGPT then merge all that into a coherent email and then send that email automatically. And so, or send it for review so that somebody can read it first before it gets sent. And so there are ways to take some of these and combine it to where the steps that you need to do are more review steps as human in the middle, instead of somebody having to actually manually go pull all that information together.
Right. Well, one of the things I'm now thinking, now this may be too complex, and I imagine there's already a tool that does this, but our clients, especially because we have so many short-term rental investors, there's a lot of thought behind the strategy and pricing and the offerings in these properties. And the pricing, strategies depend on what's the vacancies in the neighborhood, what's the seasonality, and how long are people going to stay at different rates. There's hundreds and hundreds of variables in determining how are you going to price this? Are you going to offer multi-day discounts? And what's going to give you the optimal amount of profitability? And I imagine to use AI to help refine and optimize your pricing strategy is going to take a decent amount of research and tweaking and back and forth with the system. But what are your thoughts on how AI could be implemented in assisting maybe some of our clients in their pricing strategies?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely can, and definitely does in some aspects. I know some people that have worked on projects specifically in those areas. I can't say exactly where they are with rolling them out or using them internally, but it definitely can. I mean, the idea of pulling information together, even from having these kind of robots like the robotic process automation go out and scrape other sites and specifically look for other information and then pull reports, do analysis, and make recommendations. It takes some tweaking and some training to get that right. So you kind of run that with human side by side for a little bit, but it's very doable. I mean, a lot of these, if it's less than 10,000 rules that we would run in our own head, a computer can absolutely do it. It's more teaching it and getting that process right. But yeah, I mean, almost anything that you can think of can be done now. It's just putting the steps in the right place in the right order.
Do you think it would be possible for, let's say, someone who's less sophisticated here, maybe has 10 rental properties and isn't quite ready to engage with, let's say this is a DIY type of person, do you think that they could potentially find a tool that's going to scrape all of the prices and out on the Airbnb and VRBO websites and deliver them a report of the vacancy rates and what people are charging in their neighborhood at a certain point in the week? Do you think that would be possible with the current availability of tools we have?
I think so. It's going to take it'll take a little bit of time to maybe put it together and have it create the right report for them if they're not very techie. There are, like, even just doing that as a search, like scrape all Airbnb prices and vacancy rates. There's like Apify, which is an Airbnb data scraper. There's Web Automation, which has an Airbnb date availability and price scraper. And so there are systems that are built right now to specifically pull all that off. But it probably would take a couple minutes of time to get those couple different tools and then be able to have that information come in so you can see it the right way. But with a little bit of setup, you could clean that process up also.
Yeah, you could probably pull some data, make some pull some historical trends to generate, and then maybe create some interfaces between that and how you're going to implement your price, communicate or directly enter your pricing rules into the system, or maybe even, and if you can't do that, at least create something that that'll show the instructions for you or your assistant to do. So I imagine with there's so much creativity involved in finding these solutions as well. It's a very right-brained type of activity.
Yeah, it is. And to your point, how fast it changes. Like if we had this conversation 6 months ago, none of those tools may have been available. There's so many things that are popping up now because it's cheaper, faster, easier to put them together. That even other developers putting things together, like specifically what you just asked for all we know, that tool is out here already. It may just not have shown up in the first 5 things I saw on Google. But the speed that these new tools that are rolling out is dizzying right now. I mean, we see our team sees anywhere from, well, I personally get funneled from our team up to 20 a day of tools that are changing or that I need to learn about. And there's, 20 to 100 a day that are actually rolling out or changing.
By any chance, do you know of what the IRS is going to be doing to spot red flags and to go after some of the people who are business owners and entrepreneurs and real estate investors filing their taxes?
I wish I had a connection at the IRS to have those types of answers, but I'm pretty sure if I did, I probably couldn't say I'm here. But no, I have no idea. Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm pretty sure I've heard that they're going to be doing something, and it would be interesting to see what they're looking out for, what they're flagging, and how our actions may impact their algorithms.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, side note, not directly related to that, but there's a lot of news stories over the last 6 months. The UK has rolled out a project called the Sovereign AI Project. And again, doesn't relate obviously to us here, but it's an idea of maybe a portent of what's to come. But the UK is building an AI system that basically understands and can run their entire government. The idea that it could understand and see every detail about every citizen and every business right away and make its own inferences, recommendations, take care of its own paperwork, send out its own notifications. You can still have humans in the middle wherever you want to, but in a sense, something like that could do everything all at the same time, all at once, instead of this process now where we have to kind of, I mean, there's a lot of manual process in the current system.
Yeah. What are you most excited about in the world of AI, emerging technologies?
Great question. I think it's probably two things. One is robotics, which is kind of one of the next waves, tidal waves that's going to come on the shore from how AI is making robotics so much more attainable and easier to program and do what we want with, is going to, I think, really change how all of us think about robotics and home robotics. And then the other one is more of kind of this process as we go through this true kind of revolution, how we think about how we do our work, how we accomplish our tasks. It's what we come up with, like the questions you just asked, like, is there a tool there? If it's not, somebody's going to create it. It's either going to be you or me or somebody else. And so it's the conversation I think that's what actually excites me the most, is the conversation, the possibilities, the number of things that we've heard for the first time that didn't exist. And then either we or they or somebody was able to build it. There's a lot of first times right now. And those are those light bulb moments, because once, I mean, the thing that you want to build, I want to build off of that because I don't even know what that is yet.
Yeah. So can you elaborate on what home robotics and robotics is? Because to my understanding, AI is the production of answers and knowledge and just tapping into these resources. But the robotics is the stuff that actually performs actions and uses the data and actually enters it and creates different actions. But I don't really think I have the best definition is. Can you tell me a little more about what robotics and home robotics is and what it'll potentially do?
Yeah. And I think a piece of that is a lot of people right now, when they think of the word AI, are focused on this text interface because of like the emotional win of ChatGPT. So really from an AI standpoint, there's all these little pieces that are inside of it. And like that ChatGPT is a large language model and it's a generative pre-trained transformer. It's a demonstration of those two things. And I think for robotics, what really excites me is when you think of robots, the actual motors and the actual plastic or metal aren't necessarily that expensive. What's really expensive and what takes a long time is the computer system of programming a robot. And that's been out of reach for most of us for a very long time. Princeton had a recent example where they used ChatGPT to program a robot. And so they could just type to this robot, hey, can you go pick up everything on my floor that's dirty and put it in that bin and then go grab me a Coke out of the fridge. And this robot that was not trained by a Boston Dynamics, there was no millions of dollars that went in. It was a bunch of motors and sensors attached. They could program itself to go do those actions. And so as that starts to roll out in a home environment, if I can go ask something to go lay that cord on my wall or go paint that wall or grab me a Coke and then go pull the weeds out of my yard and then go take care of my laundry, the demand for robots is greater than one per person. And so it's one of the largest demands we've ever thought of from an actual product that we sell. Mm. And the robots themselves, that you think of Tesla is really an AI software company. I mean, that's what their value is as on this control system, because if you had that, you could plug that into any car or any robot in a sense. And so just very excited to see robots roll out and the programming roll out to where it's as easy as ChatGPT, to where we can just tell it what we want it to do. And whether it's done it before or not, it can learn and figure out how to go do it.
Kind of like if Siri and Alexa were able to move around and do things and a little bit smarter.
Yeah, and the fact that another piece to there, which freaks some people out, but to me, it's actually much safer, is we used to think that all these things have to be connected to the internet, but they don't. The way these AI chips have rolled out, you can now have these chips that have their own machine learning, their own machine vision, and they're local, and it's like a $5, $10 microchip. And so the idea that a robot could be directed by you and learn how to do things, it would never have to communicate anywhere else. It would never be connected to the internet. It's never talking to an outside system. So you don't have to be afraid of somebody else being inside your house, having control of it. These could be offline systems that actually still learn themselves.
Interesting. So when we have when we have all of these automations and things in place, and I'm thinking about I mean, the future is people are going to be telling Alexa to get them a beer, and that's going to be really fascinating to see the next revolution. And I think about the analogy of when elevators first came available and the buttons came. I'm not sure if you ever heard about this, but the initial elevators, there was someone who would come and operate the elevator. That was his or her job. They would operate the elevator. But when they first introduced the buttons to do it themselves, people were like, I'm not touching this elevator. This is weird. You just press a button and there's no one to operate it and open the door. I can't trust this. And now it's like common day. So it's interesting to see when we introduce robots eventually to our home to clean and then we already have robotic vacuums, but to do more of these things is going to be interesting to see the resistance and how weird and uncomfortable it is at first as we get used to all these ideas.
No, very much agree. I mean, the societal change that we're starting to go through now. I mean, a lot of these tools we've been able to use for 2, 5, 10 years. Like we've seen those robots that can cook you dinner have been around for 3, 4, 5 years now. And obviously they're super expensive, so they're not in mass adoption yet, but everything's starting to get less and less expensive. But yeah, I mean, the societal adjustments we're going through, it was weird for me at a hotel, a couple of months ago, to see kind of a symphony of these robotic lawnmowers mowing the lawn of the hotel. I mean, just seeing all these things start to change. But yeah, we see it from like a business standpoint, as business owners, as we're implementing for them these new AI and automation tools, there's a cultural change there as far as people readjusting to how to do a job. Even team members adjusting to, hey, I don't have to do that 80% of stuff I hated before, but do I want to do that 20% thing 5 times as much? I mean, there's lots of adjustments, at home, personally, how we think about it. It's going to be a very interesting 5, 10, 20 years.
So here's another thing I'm thinking about as a CPA. So if you are building tools and you are developing, and even if you're not spending actual costs on materials and supplies, but you're hiring staff to do this stuff, and the payroll costs to develop and research and build these tools and create automations for your business and develop new ideas like this could potentially qualify for the research and development tax credit. And if you look deeper into the R&D tax credit, I mean, there are companies making millions and millions of dollars in R&D tax credits. From what I hear, is that Tesla, even if they operate at a loss, one of their greatest economic benefits of existing is just the R&D tax credits alone. And sometimes you can sell tax credits. There's a whole other world, and this is outside of my scope of expertise. But there's a whole world out there of strategizing and maximizing your R&D tax credits in your business as business owners. So lots of really interesting and exciting things there. And some of these tax credits explain part of why the super wealthy and owners of these gigantic companies are not paying any taxes at all, because of the tax incentives to use technology and further develop your business and your processes.
It's a really good point. Yeah. And from a standpoint of developing, and again, I'm not going to give tax advice on this, but when you're developing new processes, and especially when you're building new processes that are using AI and automation and these kind of cutting edge pieces, you can either develop 100% internally. What we've found and what our customers have found is that can be very expensive, because if you have one person on staff to do, and just a recommendation if this helps anybody, if you have one person on staff that's responsible for building these types of tools, or maybe you have a couple, they usually go down a road and they usually can't understand, say, those 100 changes a day. It's all the different tools. So they usually get pot committed and start using a couple tools. What we see as the benefit is we see all these cross industry projects. And so we pivot people to different tools as new tools roll out. And so sometimes, and it's not as a sales pitch, but sometimes it's easier to use a firm kind of like ours, because you don't have to rely on one person and only what they know. You get kind of the expertise of a group doing things across lots of industries. So you can move a little bit quicker, but it can still qualify under those R&D tax credits because it's still being spent for that development reason specifically.
Yeah, and also when you have a consulting firm doing it, then 100% of those costs qualify as qualified expenditures for that credit, as opposed to in other instances where we have people doing the internal research. They have to come up with a formula or a way to delegate what percentage of their costs and payroll is allocated to the process development, the research. Here we have something that is clearly, fully, and substantially dedicated for the items that are research and development. So can you tell us maybe some interesting projects that you've, before we go into the tool, just maybe some things that as a consultant that you've helped to develop in other industry, other organizations that took AI and automation to the next level?
Yeah, maybe a couple examples just from different areas. One that we see, I would say, fairly common is the idea of dealing with data entry. So when you have repetitive tasks, so if we think of anything from healthcare, where you have nurses or doctors or PAs entering tremendous amounts of information, sometimes 100 pages of test results for one patient. And those, it's health related. And so you've got to have a human typing those in or verifying. So it can be very expensive, time consuming, not super enjoyable for the person that's doing that. And so using machine vision and machine learning to have a system read those reports, even when they're very unstructured, and know where to put that information, where to put it in the database, and then in a sense, give a person still as human in the middle, that screen to see PDF or whatever came in, what was extracted, and they can just very briefly go through and review everything. And then using kind of the idea of an algorithm or other types of machine learning to even make recommendations from that data, so that a doctor or nurse can deal with recommendations, viewing, verifying, instead of actually having to type and think about everything themselves. And so for that, we've seen like the idea of a human enhanced response, or having a human in the middle, that is not replacing a human, but it's giving tremendous leverage and kind of flipping that 80-20 of 80% busy work to then 80% patient facing. Another one, which is maybe similar to a tool that we could look at in a second here, is extracting information from pictures or from pictures or video. So for an insurance process, for a tax process, like when we talk about like real estate descriptions or properties, or analyzing qualities of something, or even getting property types and things, information out of pictures to where somebody doesn't have to do it. And then the idea of like a sales manager, the three most common jobs that are getting removed right now from automation and AI, it's marketers, which doesn't remove the nuance of a good marketer to know how to grow a business, but the idea of the busy work that a lot of them need to do, like creating a brochure or creating a design that can be done faster. But it's marketers, it's sales managers, and it's developers. The sales manager one is interesting because a lot of sales managers, they spend their time digging through data to try and find out what didn't happen, like what leads weren't called, or who didn't follow up, or what got missed. That's a great way for AI to kind of just know a system, and then it can kind of just watch everything, whether through robotic process automation or other connections, and make suggestions like, hey, here's all the people that haven't been followed up with, and here's all the messages we think you should send to these 10 or 10,000 people that you haven't followed up with or haven't contacted in 6 months. And so that we still recommend that you don't have a system just go send all of those. You still have human in the middle, but the speed that a human can go through and just verify that messages are right. I mean, one person can handle hundreds an hour, thousands a day, and still have that human touch on it.
Cool. So now what I really want you to show and tell us about is the tool you have for in the real estate space for creating listings, whether they're rental listings or listings for sale. So, you have the ability to share your screen as if you want to pull this up, but you showed me another time on this, and this was like something that our audience would really love to learn about, because it takes a lot of time for them, especially some of our guys at property management companies and managing tons and tons of rentals here. This would save them a ton of time, and I think that they would really appreciate looking at how they can use AI to evaluate these properties and create listings based on the photos.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me share a screen here. This is a pretty unique company because we see a lot of different implementations. And when we think of implementations of AI, some of them are just, I say just, but a plug-in to the OpenAI, in a sense, ChatGPT, just plug in directly. So they're not really building anything on top of it. This is not a plug-in to another system. This is, it's called My Prop Pal. I met the creators of this and have spent a lot of time with them since, as when we've vetted different companies in the real estate space. And this one's pretty specific because they have their own proprietary trained image database. So it's not just a plugins like Google Cloud. these are specifically trained on real estate and pulling real estate information out. And so you get much better information from it. The other piece is the text engine is trained around the real estate laws. So it understands fair housing laws. So like if you went to ChatGPT right now and said, write a property description for this, that is not going to be fair housing compliant unless you're auditing it and making sure that it is, whereas everything here is, because it's built specifically for the residential real estate industry. And so a couple things that you can do here. One of them is you can put information in, but I'm just going to put in a house. I'm not going to type any features in. I'm just going to upload some images here. And from those images, if we click generate listing, so what this is doing is this is going through and analyzing every picture. And you can go down to minute pixels. If you upload a video, it breaks down and looks at every single frame. So you could do a video, just walk through of a house or of an apartment or have a tenant do it, and then upload it here. And right away what happened, I mean, that was what, a couple seconds, is it went through and pulled information out of each one of those pictures. And it pulls out and it puts it into the 900 RESO standard fields, which is a part of the residential real estate industry in the US. So it can be ready to upload to an MLS, specifically if they're listing on an MLS, depending if that MLS has given access. But also, it's writing the property description, and it knows if there's stainless steel appliances. It knows if it's a tile countertop or a granite countertop. And then what it can also do is it knows like quartz countertops, maple cabinets, and then it can also make recommendations. Like in this, it saw a kitchen that is not fully up to date. Now, what's interesting is I uploaded some random photos, but I did upload some pictures, which was not an updated kitchen. And so it can make property recommendations on, hey, you should do a fresh coat of paint to the exterior. You should update that kitchen with appliances, cabinets, and countertops, maybe renovate the main bathroom with new fixtures. And so again, as you're showing it what to look at, I mean, it's like, hey, you might want to renovate this one. It doesn't have everything as nice. So it can look at quality, it can look at fair housing violations, and it can write descriptions for you. And then you can look at other versions of descriptions. So for us, this was one of those deep implementations where you can see right away that it's not going to ChatGPT, but it's very much trained around a process. This company also has an API. So in a sense, an investor or somebody doing tax, I mean, you could send 1,000 photos past this and get back all the information you wanted and use it for your own process.
Wonderful. So, yeah, so I'll probably take a clip of this and send it to some of our real estate agents. I think they'd really appreciate this. As we close out, some of the things I want to know are, what are some of the things you do outside of fun?
So it cut out there for about 2 seconds. Were you asking me personally what I do for fun?
Yeah, what are you doing outside of work?
So it's either, so AI and automation is, it sounds super nerdy, but it is one of the things that I do outside of work. That's kind of what led it and bled it into work years ago. But either climbing, so bouldering, usually indoor, out hiking, paddleboarding up in Evergreen Lake, just up the mountain, up the hill, or hanging out with family. So pretty simple guy.
Awesome. And let's say if you could give to the audience one action item, one call to action. You have a chance to do it. Now, sometimes people can draw a blank, but I always like to give my guests a chance to give an action item, call to action for the audience, and then tell us where they can reach you. So what are some of the action items you might want to give to our listeners?
Yes, this is probably, again, pretty nerdy and maybe going a little bit too far, but with how everything is changing right now, for me, AI and automation is not just part of what I do for work, but it's also understanding where the world's going. Because when my kids ask me, hey, what should I go to college for in 10 years? This is a piece of my answer because things are changing so quickly. So for me, it's a real part of the world. That recommendation would be to spend 5, 10, or 15 minutes a month and just Google what's changing in AI, and just even spend 5 minutes watching a YouTube video, anything to understand kind of where this is going, because so much is changing. And the fact that a lot of people didn't know ChatGPT existed until a month ago or 3 months ago, even though they could have used the same technology years ago inside of the Microsoft system, just knowing what's possible. And then as far as how they can reach me, I think easiest would be LinkedIn, just Chris Tamm, or email, which is chris@christamm.com. Or they could always take a look at our AI and automation firm, which is CAST Services. So CAST, C-A-S-T, and then .services.
Very cool. Very cool. Chris, thank you so much for your time. I hope everybody enjoyed it. If you want to learn more, you have Chris's info. It'll be in the show notes. And if you're interested in being a client, email info@markforwardcpa.com and subscribe for more wonderful, great content.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Mark.